At what point in time as a parent did you start or have a conversation about, this is a good touch, this is not a good touch?
It's a tough one.
I think as parents, it's very important for us to help them grow into sexually healthy human beings.
I feel that this is one area parents are really taking a backseat.
And these are also, again, very difficult conversations to have. Some parents, again, choose not to have them.
There is no societal system, and whatever the system is there, which is more informal, through internet or through friends, can be damaging, can be harmful.
And that's why this conversation is important.
What advice would you give to parents who feel unsure or awkward in these situations, especially girl child?
I would say start with your own body. Be proud of your body. Ultimately, it's the confidence you show within yourself about how you feel about your own body. That's where it starts.
So welcome to the show, Kalki, and I hope you enjoy talking to us. We're very, very excited to have you on the show. We're going to jump right into the questions, and we're going to start with your motherhood journey. And I'm going to talk about what inspired you to write The Elephant in the Womb, which I think is a very honest portrayal of motherhood. So what inspired you to write it?
The absolute shock of what I was getting into. I got pregnant and I was like, nobody told me about this. Nobody told me about that. And, not so much the medical aspect, which you can get a lot of access to information from your doctor, from books, but the psychological aspect of the responsibility of carrying this thing inside you. And on the one hand, it's like eating you alive. And on the other hand, it's like you don't want to do anything that you used to do. You don't want to take any risks. You want to do everything to protect this creature which you don't even know yet. So this overwhelming feelings that were coming up while I was pregnant. And I started taking some notes and, just started writing things down. And also starting to doodle. I was doodling the experience because it was so comical sometimes. I would find myself in the middle of the street, bursting in tears, just collapsing there on the pavement. And everybody's just like, isko kya hua? So I think all of those experiences. And then what really sealed the deal to make it into a book was as soon as my daughter was born, we went into lockdown, the first lockdown. And I was completely isolated. I didn't have any other parents. We were kind of just on our own. And I lost my identity as an actor completely because, there was no going back to work. There was no thought of like when work is going to start again, which can give you some sort of psychological, hope that, okay, I know this is hard, but I know in 3 months I'm getting back to work, so that identity was completely taken away. I didn't know how long this would last, and it felt like this is all I'm going to do now. And so I started writing much more vigorously, and I have to give credit to my partner for kind of making me do it, in the sense that not making me do it, but just giving me the space. Every day, for those few hours in the morning, he was like, go. I'm taking the baby away. Just go do your thing. Just cry, sleep, write, whatever you want to do. But I don't want you to be in, because you're so into the baby in the beginning. You're just every moment, every squeak, you're like, I gotta fix it. I gotta find out what's wrong with the baby. So I had to really like have that discipline to take some time for myself. So yeah, it just developed into this project during the lockdown. And I wrote to Penguin. I wrote to my friend Val, who's an amazing illustrator. And everybody was on board, and it was, a fun and therapeutic project to do.
I can totally get the whole therapeutic thing because, I had children, 28 years ago. And it really was like that. I was a working mom. I've been a working mom all through, and it really was like that. It was crazy because we didn't have much maternity leave in those days, and having a little baby, and that everything that you're saying, that little squeak, little squeal, little this, everything you feel you're responsible. And taking that time away is just so important. I think it's just such a great lesson for young moms that if you can get a few hours to yourself, if you have the luxury, you have the help, and you can get a few hours for yourself, just for yourself every day, it can really be, I think it could be quite the game changer in motherhood.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the partner support which you got is also very, very important.
Yeah.
And not many
Yeah.
partners do that. So Kalki, very, very happy to listen to that part. So what parts of your journey surprised you as you were writing this book?
There's obviously two sides to it. There's the side which is really overwhelming, that you're always tired, that you feel like you're just a machine for this child, that your whole life is now just dedicated to this child. And then there's this other side which is also, addicted to this child, wants to be with this child, wants to make the most of this. So I think finding that balance was something that took me years, actually. I started it during this writing process, but it has continued to today. I think there should be a separate universe for mom's guilt, because still, if I go away, I feel guilty, and it's like now the system is in place. Everybody's got their roles to play. My daughter is very comfortable with her dad. She's comfortable with the nanny. She has her grandparents, like she has everything in place so that I can go and do things. But still, like, my brain is like, oh God, if she's sick, I don't want to leave, and then I rushed right back instead of spending, a little extra time. I'm just like, no, I won't spend any time in New York. I won't go see my friends. I'll just fly right back, so this feeling that you got to be choosing all the time is a hard balance to strike. And I would say it's still something. It's better. It's easier, but it's still something that I always feel.
So as a far more experienced guilty mommy, I can only tell you this, that it'll get better and better and better. And there'll be a time you won't feel guilty at all. And you're going to be glad that you went back to work and you reclaimed your own identity. Trust me.
I'm absolutely glad I have gone back to work. There's no regrets about it. It's just you just want to be in two places at once. And that won't change ever, I don't think. Like, my heart now is outside of me, and it will always be there as well as here.
Yeah. I totally get that. Totally get that. I'm going to talk about, the subject of today's podcast, which is talking about consent and body safety. And, raising a girl child in India is really, really difficult because there are genuine safety issues. So how old is your daughter now?
5.
Okay. So at what point in time as a parent did you start or have a conversation about, this is a good touch, this is not a good touch, especially working mom has to leave, there's nanny, but there's also a lot of other house help. So when did you start talking to Sappho about these things?
I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was as early as language. I think as soon as she started speaking and understanding a little, I think, naming the body parts was very early on, because, you're teaching your child to go and do potty and susu and things. So you do need to teach the child where that's coming from. So we have like names for all of these things. And of course, they're not, the name vagina, for example, came at a later stage. At first, it was the French word zizi, which is like a baby word for it. But I feel like just owning the parts of her body was very early on. I don't think there's any sort of need to wait. because it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's part of who you are. And I feel like the earlier they can own that, the more easy it is for them to come and tell you if something happens. And it's actually happened once where she came back from school and said, somebody touched my zizi. And of course, my stomach went into knot, like, oh my God, what, and I was just internally, I was just trying not to panic. And I asked her a few more questions and we talked about it. And it was basically in the bathroom, the girls go to the bathroom together, two, three of them. And we found out that it was one of her classmates, and it was done in sort of innocence. And I spoke to her teacher, her nursery teacher at the time, who was wonderful and so open about it. And she said, you're right, I haven't had a class about this. And my daughter was how old? 4 last year, right? And she had a class with all her students, explaining that our body parts are private, certain parts are private, and that nobody else should touch them. So it was really wonderful to have that collaboration with the school, which I know doesn't always happen. And at the same time, I was so happy that my daughter was able to just comfortably tell me this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really an incredible story, and kudos to the school. I mean, and to the teacher. Fabulous.
No, I think the response of the school was very, very constructive, which normally
It's just so positive.
so positive.
Yeah.
So Kalki, tell me, in this same similar situation, what advice would you give to parents who feel unsure or awkward? Because generally, maybe more than 80-90% of Indian parents feel unsure and awkward in these situations, especially girl child. So what kind of advice can you give to them?
I would say start with your own body. Be proud of your body. Speak about that with your loved one, your partner. It starts with that. If you are comfortable, your kids will feel comfortable. If you are awkward about something, they will feel awkward about it. So I think honestly, there's no right or wrong way to say it, to learn it. I mean, you can use certain safe words and all of those things, but I think ultimately it's the confidence you show within yourself about how you feel about your own body. So I feel that that's where it starts.
Well said. Very well
Very
said.
well said. And
Very well said.
Manoj, in a lot of earlier generations, maybe these conversations would be awkward, etc. But I think that a lot of people, hopefully the good parent, hopefully this conversation with Kalki will open the doors for younger parents now to be a little more aware. We can't change what has happened in the past, but we can certainly pave the way for younger
Absolutely.
parents,
Absolutely.
parents to be more aware about this situation.
Yeah.
I agree.
I wanted to also talk to you a little bit about, sustainable parenting and, the choice of moving away from a big metro to, Goa, which is also a big city. But my assumption would be that, and I did read somewhere, that you were looking to build a more sustainable lifestyle with your family. And I just wanted to ask you that, what are some of the things that you have integrated into daily life to encourage this as a parent? I mean, you're doing it and leading by example, but what are you doing which is also teaching your daughter about sustainability?
So, what happens when you're in a city like Bombay is that you run out of options very quickly. There's a mall where there's like a play center for kids. The parks are not very usable most of the time. The weather is not conducive. And so you end up, just creating small things within the household, trying to, and trying to keep the screen away as much as possible. So it's very difficult to kind of integrate nature in a city like Bombay. Um, and of course, people don't have the privilege of just living in a completely different place like I do. A lot of people don't have that choice. Um, but we had that choice and that privilege, and we decided to use it to come and live in a place where access to nature is much easier. We have a garden. There's a forest right outside her window. This is my daughter's room. So first thing she sees is squirrels. She knows the names of like certain birds because she sees them every day. Like bulbul comes every day, and so she's already learned all these. Of course, we've taught her all about snakes because a lot of snakes here. We have a book on snakes, written by a Goan writer. And weekends, and after schools, weekends we try to plan quite nature oriented activities. So we'll go to like a guest house, especially now in the monsoon, you get a lot of waterfall treks. And so you go really into the forest with a guide, and they take you swimming in these little waterfalls, and it's really lovely. Or of course there's the beach. So the interactions with her other classmates and all, school friends or other play dates are usually outdoors. At least one of the days of Saturday and Sunday is that. And even in the weekdays after school, we might go for a cycle ride. We'll take the dogs for a walk, for a long walk, things like that. So, it's just much more conducive to that kind of living here.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Delhi in the 70s and
Absolutely.
really how I grew up. So it really was easy. There was just still a lot of nature. We were always cycling. We were always out. There was plenty to do because there were no malls.
And they were so green.
There were
city
no
was
malls
green.
and no play centers and everything. So you really had to imagine a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
So-
very
I think
different
those
days.
of us who've experienced it also want to give that, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
I think if you grow up in a city and it's normal for you to live without all those things, but I grew up fully in nature, yeah. So I
Yeah.
felt like I need to also give her that.
So if you grew fully in nature, which is fantastic, is that why nature is so central to your parenting practice? And what kind of advice will you give to urban parents how to take their children back to nature?
I find nature very balancing, especially with the kind of lifestyle that I have in terms of travel, shooting, 15 hours a day, plus all the social media anxiety, all that stuff. I feel like you just need to look at a hummingbird and suddenly you're like your attention is in the moment. You're not thinking about anything else,
Yeah.
just that beauty and what's around you. So I think it brings you back to the present in a great way. So yeah, I do put nature quite high up there in terms of like lifestyle. And for parents, urban parents, it's not easy. I know because I had done it in the first few years. But even within Bombay, I used to go to Kamshet in the weekends. I used to try to go to a place which has like a nice lake or somewhere, and it's the same cost as what you're going to spend going to the mall and the cinema and all those things, right? So it's just about what you want to prioritize. So there are ways, there are these now groups on Facebook like Blueberry Trails that organize treks. So find out about those things if it interests you, because there are options. And of course, whatever you can do in little projects within your own community. If you're in a building, you guys can plant certain things in the parking area, and you'll have a play area or whatever. So I feel like trying to get to know your neighbors. Like I had a neighbor who had a daughter around the same time as me, and so we both would just hang out and go for walks with them and stuff. So yeah, I think just finding community is a great start to making things happen, with which connect with people, with nature and things. Of course, if you can get a pet, nothing like it.
I'm the big pet parent. My son often complains. He's sitting right here and listening to everything. And I remember when he was a kid, he used to say, I think you love the dog more than you love us, mom. So, but I think it's so good for kids to grow up with pets. So good for them to grow up with pets. I think it teaches them kindness at a very early age and responsibility.
Yes. Yeah, we have 2 puppies right now, 5-month-old, destroying everything, the furniture. Like they're in the velociraptor.
Velociraptor speed, yes. Yeah. I currently have a 7-month-old who's also a velociraptor. So yeah, I know, I get it. I'm gonna switch back to you and the focus on you. That the life that you live in, there is a certain amount of media glare and that, like you said, social media anxiety, etc., etc. And there's just it's a difficult life, right? Sets could be different countries, different places, lot of travel. Now that you're at that stage where your daughter is 5 years old, how are you balancing everything? How are you balancing career? Are you taking any time out for yourself and just traveling just for yourself, or not yet? And more importantly, how do you manage presence as a mom?
So the presence thing, in terms of, like, I remember when I was shooting last year for 6 weeks in France, and it's the longest I've been away from her. I was very nervous about it. And I was like, she's going to hate me and she's going to forget me and all of those kind of thoughts. So every day I would send her, I would record voice note. I would record a fairy tale for nighttime, so that when she goes to sleep, whoever's telling her nighttime stories also makes her listen to one of my stories. And they got more and more elaborate. So, in my lunch break on shoot or wherever, I would like research all these stories, from all over the world. And I would like find a really cool one and, send her these. So, it just became my little project on the side while I was shooting. And it just made me feel a little more calm inside. And she loved them. She was like looking forward to her mama story every day. And if I skipped one, I was in big trouble. But it just gave me a way to tie over that difficult time. And when I'm with my daughter, I do have a very strict policy of not having the phone with me. So there's a certain time that my management, my team knows that if I'm at home, I pick up my daughter at 4, and until 8 p.m., there's no phone from 4 to 8 p.m. If I'm not at work, if I'm at home, because work continues all the time on our phones, right? Even when we're at home. So now it's become they're quite used to that they won't get a response. I will not be able to post that thing or accept that collab between those hours. It's become part of my routine when I'm here. So I do keep that presence quite pure in that sense when I'm with her, as much as I can. Of course, sometimes you have a delivery guy coming or something, you have to be on the phone. But most of the time, I manage to do that. And in terms of the last part of your question, I think the first thing you asked me was how do I manage the balance work? How do I work? And I think it's not easy. It's not easy, but somehow it gets better with time. My daughter's brain has also developed to that cognitive understanding of time away and time here, I think before she just didn't understand how much time it would be and all of those things. So now the conversations have gotten better with her. But I do remember learning something very early on. And it was during the shoot of Goldfish. She was 1.5 years old. And we were in the second pandemic, right? The second lockdown. So my nanny couldn't get a visa. And I had to go without my nanny to London with my daughter. My husband was also working, so he couldn't come. And then I was interviewing nannies on Zoom, so from England, so that I could have a nanny when I'm working. And we got there 2 weeks in advance to acclimatize with the nanny, and all the COVID rules and all that, quarantine and all. And during that time, she just refused to go with this nanny because she had been a COVID baby. She had me 24/7. I was like there for her. So she just could not accept this other person. And she refused to go with the nanny. And it was the day before shoot. I had a 6 a.m. call time. It was 10 p.m. She was refusing to go to sleep. And I was trying everything. And finally, I just collapsed on a park bench in Clapham somewhere. And I said, listen, Sappho, this film means a lot to me. I haven't worked in 2 years. I really want to do it. It'll make me so happy. And I promise you I'll be here every morning and every night. But in the daytime, I need you to go with Nanny Amanda. She fell asleep within 2 minutes. And the next morning, she woke up and said, where's Nanny Amanda? I want to go with Nanny Amanda.
Oh,
Fantastic. Great story.
I realized it was a big lesson because you always try to make yourself strong and say, everything's fine, okay. But when you become vulnerable with your child and you tell them what you actually really want, they're far more accepting than you would think.
and surprisingly understand. It doesn't matter what
No,
age
absolutely.
the children are, they just get it.
Because I have tried this with my granddaughter when she was 1, 2, and she understood very fast. Nanu, you have to go to office. Okay, I'll meet you after office. Because they understand, if you explain properly, they understand that there's something else which is important.
My kids grew up in office. They just grew up in office because I used to just cart them to office. I had the luxury of doing that. And they grew up in office and they grew up watching me work. But they also knew the minute she sits in the car, she will forget where her phone is. She will forget everything. And after that, it's very much like your story. The time was only for the children. Weekends, most weekends, I never used to know where my phone is.
Yeah. That's a consistent thing in my house. Where's Kalki's phone? It's in some cupboard somewhere.
Yeah. But I think most working moms, we have very, very similar stories. Very similar. And when she was talking about the storytelling thing, I remembered how many stories you used to cook up for your daughters. You actually used to make up the stories.
I can tell you
the whale that went to
whales
Australia.
Of the world, all the dolphins of the world, they were all in my stories. And both my daughters, I have 2 daughters, by the way, and elder one is, I think, your age. And they still remember, and they tell their children
the same stories.
So
That's amazing.
So don't be too surprised if many, many years later, she's telling all the fairy stories that she heard from your voice notes.
Okay, so the other thing which is at home, which many, many parents are struggling now, especially working when both the parents are working, is the screen time. How you limit the screen environment without pushback, without guilt. And what do you replace it with? Because I can understand you replace it with nature, you replace it with forest, animals,
Walks,
birds,
pets, yeah.
I know that's fantastic because you are in Goa. But how do you do it overall? Especially you may not be in Goa forever. In the sense you travel, she also travels with you.
No, and there have been times where I've not been in Goa. I've been in Bombay. I've been traveling with my daughter. We've been abroad when we didn't have help. I mean, we've been moving a lot. And in those times, you don't have the luxury. Sometimes I needed to cook a meal and I needed to put the screen in front of her so that I could cook the meal, you know? And I know a lot of parents just use the screen time as, okay, now I just need them to be in one place so that I can go do things. And it is really, really tough to do that. One of the things I've done, obviously, coming to Goa has made life a lot easier. I have a lot more activities for her to offer her. One of the things that really helped me though was to make a chart for her. She made the chart. We drew up a chart with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and all the things that we would like to do on each day. And somehow this organizational visual, and we illustrated it, we made it really beautiful. It's just on her cupboard over there.
Oh.
And we made it all like full of nice colors and all that. So that chart really helps her when she's like, I want TV or whatever. She just goes and looks at her chart and she accepts it. If there's no TV that day, she accepts it because it's on her chart.
Fantastic.
This is actually amazing.
Great idea.
Such a fantastic
And a simple idea.
Yeah. So this kind of thing has really helped. Just giving them kind of boundaries and things which are in a nice way. So they just need to go refer to it, and they kind of become their own parent in that sense when they see that.
It's about exciting alternates, creating exciting alternates for children to.
Yeah, which they only have come up with.
Yes.
Yeah. And the structure around it also, that there is a structure. You have TV, it's on a certain day.
Yeah.
You don't have TV on certain. Structure is, we've discussed this in previous episodes, and I'm a big believer that structure is so important. Unstructured stuff is also very important, but a certain degree of structure is so important with young children.
Yes.
Yeah.
What parenting belief did you once hold, which you have now completely let go of?
Like, it's hard to say. Like, I was very against punishment as a concept, and my partner was very pro punishment. So we got into like a deadlock. And we actually went, we got help. We spoke to a child psychologist, and she did an amazing job to help us understand how the brain works and of a child that age. She was the voice of our daughter. And she said, this is what your daughter thinks when you say this or when you do this. And so with punishment, I was always like, no, I think that if you keep punishing your child, they just do it behind your back, and it's just gonna become like a battle against parent and child. And he was like, no, you can't. We're not gonna raise a brat. If she hits somebody, she needs a punishment. So we were trying to figure this out, and now I've come halfway. I've met him halfway on that, in the sense that we do have punishment, but we call it a consequence. We don't call it a punishment. So if you do this, there is this consequence. Just like if you go to school and you're mean to somebody, the consequence is they won't want to play with you. And similarly, if you hit somebody, the consequence is half an hour of TV gone, or whatever it might be. One episode of Meera, the royal detective, gone. So, but the important part was that the punishment remains consistent. So you don't just take away anything depending on, in that moment, you don't do something out of anger. You don't go, you have been a naughty child, I'm not letting you meet your friend this weekend, or, whatever. Just, you don't make up the punishment. The punishment is very regulated. So it's always the same for that action. That action gets this action gets that. If even something as simple as, if you don't eat your greens, you don't get meetha after the meal. So it's just, I think my concept, I was a big softie, and I was like, And now I've understood the need for that structure and that discipline. But I think it's nicer to frame it around the idea of consequence, because we do have consequences to our actions, and not so corporal punishment, like, like that. This is just, you're a bad child. I think that the problem I had is this labeling of the bad child. So now we don't take it as a big drama if something goes wrong. We just say there's a consequence.
Thank you so much. It was really, really nice talking to you. I think we came away with a lot of very interesting stuff.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure. And I liked all the pointed questions which you asked. You didn't hold back. So thank you for that. I enjoyed talking about this whole journey. Even I hadn't thought about some of those things.
Most viewers know that I have two children, two boys, that one is 28 and the other is 22. And I remember as they were growing up, the first conversation that I had about body safety was surprisingly with my younger child, Arsh. And we've always had house help at home, but they were women. But I don't know what I was thinking at that point in time and why I was so afraid or conscious, that I remember he was 3 or 4 years old, and I would ask him, like, when Didi gives you a bath, how does she give you a bath? I mean, I would ask him a lot of questions, and I would explain to him that this is okay, and this sort of touch is okay, and this sort of touch is not okay, and if it happens, you've got to tell mommy. And I used to have these conversations with him regularly. And then again, throw back to a couple of years before that, Ishan was turning 9 or 10. And I felt that we must have the taboo sex talk with him. So I spoke to my husband and I said we should talk to him and we should tell him about things, because, he's walked into the bathroom and he's seen sanitary napkins in the dustbin, and he's always wondering what is happening. And I want to have this conversation with him. And my husband's view was vociferously that there is absolutely no need, and children find out about these things on their own, and I don't think you should have the conversation with him. I felt very strongly about having the conversation, and I thought the best way to do it is extremely clinically. I didn't want to make a big deal of it. I just sat Ishan down and I asked him that, has anybody ever talked to you about how babies are made? And he said, no. And I said, do you know anything? Have friends ever talked about it? And he said, no, not really. And then I drew out a diagram of ovaries and the uterus and explained to him, these are eggs, this is where the sperm comes from, this is how babies are born. And I remember he asked me, I think he was 9, and he asked me, is this how I was born? And I said, yes, this is exactly how you were born. And then I explained to him that women have a menstrual cycle, this is what happens. But it was a super clinical discussion on a sheet of paper. But I'm so glad that I had these conversations with my children young. They grew up knowing that it is talking to their parents about this subject is not taboo. They know that they can always come to their mother and talk to her about absolutely anything. And I strongly feel, Manoj, like I still today also, and I'm talking to so many parents and telling them, I strongly feel that especially in this day and age, where your child has so much exposure through the internet to very graphic sexual imagery, etc., we think that our children don't have access to it, but they have access to it. There is a lot of discussions that happen amongst friends. I think as parents, as we're helping them grow to be good citizens, as we're helping them grow to be responsible young adults, it's very important for us also to help them grow into sexually healthy human beings as well. And that's why this conversation is important.
Absolutely. Shailja, you're absolutely right. unfortunately, the response of your husband is a normal response from an Indian parent.
Yeah.
I believe that 90% or even more parents are not talking about it. And I feel very clearly that for a healthy adult, for a healthy teenage life, for a safe life, for a respectful life of both a boy and a girl, this discussion, timely discussion, and I think the time is around 10, bit
Yeah.
early, bit late, it may
Yeah.
be different,
Yeah.
but it has to be led by either both the parents or by at least one parent, like you did. And very important for the daughter to understand how she has to deal with it, because these are practical situations where the daughters have to deal with it personally and at school or college or wherever, outside home. And similarly, how sons have to deal with it at home, school, wherever. And I feel that particularly girls, they have to start with self-respect of what they are. And if they start with self-respect, I think they will behave accordingly. And the boys, on the other hand, if the parents teach them to respect
Women.
Yes.
Yes.
They will behave accordingly.
Yeah.
And both sides, the respect will lead to a healthy relationship.
So, because we're talking about respect and all of that, that's another conversation that I think parents need to have with their children. I do know, and Ishan's in the studio today, so he will vouch for the fact that, when he became a little older, 12, 13, and there was an interest in the opposite sex, and I remember telling him this, that, beta, you will meet a lot of people. You'll have different kinds of relationships. Some will be friends, some will be girlfriends. Some relationships will be maybe just holding hands. Some will be beyond that. You will kiss a girl. And at some point in time, you will also sleep with someone. But I never want you to talk to make fun of another human being. I never want you to disrespect another human being. I want you to understand that consent is something which is very, very important for a girl. Please do not take for granted that someone is your girlfriend, so she's expected to do certain things for you. That's not, it's not fair. And then the entire conversation about that boys, it is your responsibility that you do not kiss and tell, because you have to learn to respect the fact that whoever you're with is also someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's friend. So you cannot be, boys have this habit of talking about it to their other guy friends. Girls also do it. And I said, I don't want both you boys, I want you to learn that you cannot do this. And this is not acceptable behavior in our home.
Absolutely right.
And I have to say that both boys grew up, I would say, on point on this subject. They're incredibly respectful to women. I think they understand the concept of consent. And there is a lot of conversation, especially, I think, maybe in smaller towns and cities, that parents also have to have with their children on the concept of safety. That you want to avoid teen pregnancies. You want to avoid, situations where what we call today relationship-based rape, that you're in a relationship but a girl feels violated. So I think these subjects are important to talk about. They're difficult things to talk about. They're hard conversations to have, awkward conversations to have, maybe even embarrassing conversations to have for some parents. But I think it's very important for parents to have these conversations.
Yeah. So maybe some parents expect easier things, but I don't think they are difficult. I feel what consequences could be difficult if you don't do it.
Yes.
And I feel that there are some follies of our culture, which, whether they're big towns or small towns, and I like to talk about a couple of them. One, that this issue of consent is an assumption, which is a wrong assumption.
Yes.
And clearly, consent has to be expressed.
Yeah.
Consent cannot be assumed at all. So I feel that's a big folly of our society. And I feel that it can only be resolved by boys being nurtured as they grow up with responsibility, which means that they should understand that they are responsible citizens, they are responsible children, and they have to, before taking another step, be clear on the consent of the other person. Very,
Yes.
very important.
Yeah.
Because I feel consent in our society is still a gray zone, which is not gray. In my mind, it is white or black.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think parents of the boys have to teach the boys exactly this. On the other hand, girls have to become stronger, smarter and stronger to not give the consent expressly if they don't feel like.
Yeah. You should never be bullied into
Yes,
consent.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or emotionally bullied. I
Yes.
think in a lot of young relationships, teenage relationships, there is a degree of emotional bullying that leads to consent.
Yeah.
Oh, if you love me, you must do this. I
Yeah.
mean, children are 15, 16 years
Yeah,
old and they're having these conversations. And that's not a healthy conversation for any child to be
Absolutely
having.
not. And the girls have to stand very strong on their feet to say that what they want to say.
Yeah.
Whether they want to say yes or no, or they want to clearly, they have to expressly state
Yes.
their view
Yeah.
with confidence. And that is what has to be taught by parents to the girls, that you have to state it. So both sides, I feel parenting has to be very expressed now. And more than 90% of India has to take a lead. So I feel that this is one area, as you rightly said, parents are really taking a backseat and not coming out. They want to keep it under the carpet. They don't want to talk about it, as if there is a societal system which will teach. There is no societal system. And whatever the system is there, which is more informal through internet or through friends, can be damaging, can be harmful. So don't leave it to that. I think it's better to control it. It's better to take.
It's better to give them the right,
Yes.
the healthy view of how they must look at sexual relationships as young adults, than for them again to assume through whatever information that they have. I think it's important for parents to have conversations with their daughters about sex education. And like you said, 10 is a great age, primarily because you want to teach your child early about consent and body safety. I think it's equally important to have the same conversations with your male children, because you also want to teach them about consent and respect. And I think the consent is really the common word in both places. But I think for men, it is, for the male gender, it's very important for parents to have the conversation, really keeping respect in mind. And, what they learn is healthy and what is not healthy.